conflict is in every scene and in every character. This is absolutely crucial. If you have a scene that is not furthering the story, is not unraveling conflict, doesn't have some sort of goal that the character is aiming for and not achieving, the reader's going to get bored. I wrote a book a few years ago, my book Last of the Summer Vines, which is set in Italy. And my publisher kind of wanted it to feel a bit like a travel log as well for Italy. Only I started to realize I had all these random scenes where my characters were going off and enjoying the Italian countryside and visiting sort of tourist attractions. And I was like, but what's the point in all of this? If it's not furthering the story, it's just, quite frankly, if I were the reader, I would probably put the book down and walk away at that point. So you have to then write into that scene some reason for it to be there, some way in which it flips things around for the character, prevents them from getting what they want. It just changes or reveals a little piece of the puzzle of their conflict. Otherwise, it should go. This is what we call killing our darlings. I'm sure you've heard that saying. I think it was Stephen King who made it famous. When he said kill your darlings, he doesn't necessarily mean kill off your favorite characters. What he's saying is if you have scenes or words that you feel very invested in, but they're not serving a purpose, they have to go. Competing goals. This is the best kind of conflict, is when you're, especially if you've got like a man versus man story or a man versus self story, you've got to have competing goals. For example, what the character might want and what the character might need could be two different things. Or the best external conflicts are where your villain and your antagonist and your protagonist have absolutely opposite opposing goals. And as I've touched on already, the difference between what your character wants and what they need. And you, as the author, get to play God and decide what it is they really need by the end of the story. Are they actually going to get what they want? Or are they going to have their life completely changed in a way that you know is better for them? And I've said this already. The best conflict is linked to the character's growth arc. The two are so closely intertwined that you actually cannot separate internal conflict from the character's growth arc. The best conflict is a force for change. And this is where your external conflict and your internal conflict line up together. Your external conflict forces the internal change. Perfect example of this is Star Wars. The external conflict is the droids arriving from space. They've got the message. They bring a message from Princess Leia that she's being held captive. Obi-Wan Kenobi needs to go to her rescue. You've got stormtroopers. You've got, there's actually a bit of everything. You've got the evil villain, but you've also got an entire society. So it's man against society. So all of this is going on. But at the same time, the change that happens within Luke Skywalker, who is the protagonist of the original, I always refer to the original, the very, very first Star Wars, because that is really the perfect structure, story structure. So Luke is the farm boy who's got dreams of a bigger life, better life, but he's held back by his own fear. His father left to go and explore the universe and was killed. That's the story he's always been told. So he's terrified that if he goes, he'll follow the same path and he'll also die. So as a result, he's living in fear. While all of his friends have left the planet, he's still on the farm. But his entire internal growth arc, his change, happens because the droids arrive and force onto him and brings with them Star Troopers and, introduce him to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Princess Leia. All of that is external, but it forces him to change as a person and to become a Jedi Knight. Effectively, that first movie is all about his move from being the farm boy to being a Jedi Knight, and it's a huge internal transformation. The best conflict is layered. So you need to deepen the conflict as the story progresses, especially if you're writing a longer novel. If you're writing a short story or novella, you can sort of give quite large hints about the conflict in the beginning. But if you're writing a full-length novel, you only want to hint at it in the beginning. You want to give the reader a little clue as to what the conflict might be, but you don't want to unravel all of it. You don't want to have your whole first chapter, and this is where, again, I see a lot of beginner writers, their first chapter is the whole character's backstory that brings them up to this point. And you as the writer need to know that backstory. The reader does not need to know it, especially not straight up front, because then they've got no other reason to read the rest of the story. You've just put all your cards on the table right up front. Imagine you're playing poker. You want to keep some of those cards to yourself. You want to go as long as you can in the game until you lay down the cards and hopefully win the game. So layer that story. It's often referred to like having layers of an onion. You want to peel it off layer by layer by layer until you get to the core of the conflict, the real wound in the character's past that they have buried so deep that they haven't dealt with it. A perfect example is Good Will Hunting, where Will has issues from his past that he has never really faced. And until that pivotal moment where Robin Williams sort of digs really deep into him and gets him to finally confess what happened to him as a child. But if you'd had that in the first scene, you would have no more movie. There would have been nothing to keep you watching. You would never have wondered, why is Will the way he is? You want to keep the reader wondering, why is this character like this? Why are they responding like this? Oh, there's a bit of a hint there. Okay, I can see they obviously have trust issues. I wonder why they have trust issues. Let me read on until you really get to the meat of the story. Now I understand why this character has trust issues. I get it. Oh, but now they have to heal from those trust issues. Now that it's been exposed, they can heal and move on, and we can get a resolution. And the best conflict is resolved only by sacrifice. Now, this is an optional extra. You don't have to put this in your book, but it really does add a really nice layer to have some sort of sacrifice. One example of sacrifice would be obviously the original Star Wars, where Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices himself and dies in order for Luke to live and to live to his full potential and become who he really is. In the movie 27 Dresses, where Jane has been a bridesmaid 27 times and is now being a bridesmaid for her sister's wedding, her sister cuts up their mother's wedding dress. It is only when the dress is sacrificed that Jane is able to fully embrace her change that she has been building up to throughout the movie. So I want you to think, sometimes it can be a good sacrifice. For example, it can be sacrificing their original goal. If you've got the difference between what the character wanted at the beginning of the story and what they need, maybe what they have to sacrifice is the job promotion. For example, if you're writing a love story and both the hero and the heroine or the two love interests are up for the same job and they're both competing for the same job or the same client that they're trying to win over, one of them might choose to sacrifice the job or sacrifice the client or the account in order to give their new love interest what they most desire. So in a romance, and this is particularly important, both your characters need to have conflict. If you don't, again, you're probably going to have a one POV novella only. Ideally, nowadays, both characters, both your protagonists, both your love interests need to have conflict, and those conflicts need to be directly related to one another. Again, it's like the spider in the fire. You can't have one that's got a conflict that's way over that side and the other one's got a conflict that's way over that side, and the two don't connect. Their conflicts need to be directly linked to one another so that only they can help each other to resolve it. And one of them may need to sacrifice something. If let's say your one character has always resolved they will never ever get married, they may need to sacrifice that belief, or they may need to sacrifice a belief from their past that they're hanging on to. In my book, my latest one, My Best Friend's Royal Wedding, I still loathe that title, but it kind of works. In My Best Friend's Royal Wedding, my heroine is very, very prejudiced against wealthy men, entitled wealthy men. She's met a lot of them in her past. She's been hurt by them in her past. She's actually met the hero before in the past and been offended by him. So that prejudice carries her through the book. She has to sacrifice that prejudice in order to find happiness. And the last thing that a really good conflict is it's personal and it's primal. So, for example, primal issues would be survival, hunger, sex, protecting your loved ones.